All right, everyone. I'm back in the chair again, and I know you're probably asking yourself, why does Mr. McGee have a globe and a basketball? Well, the answer is, I don't really know. Artavius and Caitlin told me that I should have a basketball globe in the video, so I'm just doing what they said. Now, obviously there's a reason, because we're going to talk about something that is unique with Australia, and it's the fact that there's something different about their seasons from the people who live in the Northern Hemisphere, including us. The United States is in the Northern Hemisphere, so we're going to talk about that. In order to talk about what's different about Australia's seasons and actually understand it, we need to take a look at our globe, and I'm sorry for the sound the chair is making. It needs some WD-40. But if we look at our globe here, by the way, our basketball represents the sun. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope we all realize that the sun is actually 330,000 times larger than the Earth. And guess what? I don't have any sports equipment that's 330,000 times larger than my globe. So you are going to have to use your imagination. All right? So keep that in mind. The sun is actually way larger than the Earth, but my basketball is representing the sun compared to our globe, which of course is the Earth. Now, first thing that we need to remember is this. You've heard this all through elementary school. You've probably heard it in Earth Science this year. The planet Earth rotates on its, I'm sure everyone at home is screaming, axis. Exactly. So you notice the Earth is kind of at this diagonal slant. It is not just vertical, without a diagonal slant to it. Obviously, it's still up and down, but it's at a diagonal, okay? That is going to be very important. Without the Earth rotating on its axis, we would not have seasons, or not seasons the way you think about it today. Now, let's take a look at the Earth with our sun. Now, everyone see the equator here? So the equator divides the Earth into the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. Here's our wonderful continent of Australia. Australia is completely within the Southern Hemisphere. If I were to go ahead and rotate our Earth, not literally the Earth, but here's North America. Obviously, we live in the United States, in Georgia, okay? Our continent is completely in the Northern Hemisphere. And by the way, most people live in the Northern Hemisphere. So Europe is in the Northern Hemisphere. See if I can get rid of this glare. Asia is in the Northern Hemisphere. Half of Africa is in the Northern Hemisphere. Even part of South America is in the Northern Hemisphere. Australia is the only habitable continent, I should say, because we do have Antarctica, but we can't even see Antarctica there. But Australia is the only habitable continent that is completely in the Southern Hemisphere. So now, let's take a look at the Earth with our basketball sun. So, if you notice, our Earth again is on its axis, and the Earth, think about it, the Earth orbits the sun. And how many days does it take for the Earth to make one rotation around the sun, or one orbit, I should say, around the sun? It takes 365 days, which is a year, okay? So, 365 days for the Earth to orbit the sun. Well, at certain parts in Earth's orbit, one hemisphere will be tilted towards the sun, and one hemisphere will be tilted away from the sun. So, if the Earth is in this part of its orbit, notice that the southern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, and the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the southern hemisphere is experiencing spring and summer because it's tilted towards the sun. The northern hemisphere is experiencing fall and winter because it's tilted away from the sun. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look what happens when the Earth is in a different part of its orbit. Ta-da! By the way, ladies and gentlemen, cutting edge special effects brought to you by Dobbins Middle School. We spare no expenses. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Earth in a different part of its orbit. But look, the northern hemisphere is now tilted towards the sun, and the southern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. So now the Northern Hemisphere is experiencing spring and summer, whereas the Southern Hemisphere, with Australia being completely in the Southern Hemisphere, is experiencing fall and winter. Now, if you're asking yourself, okay, so Australia experiences fall and winter when we in the Northern Hemisphere experience spring and summer, and Australia experiences spring and summer when we in the Northern Hemisphere are experiencing fall and winter. Well, ladies and gentlemen, think about what that means. If Australia's seasons are opposite ours, then December through February in Australia is summer because their seasons are opposite. Now, if you're thinking, whoa, wait a second, impossible, go back to the beginning of this video and look at how I just talked about when the Northern Hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, what are the seasons, and when the Southern Hemisphere is tilted away, what are its seasons, and then vice versa. All right, so in Australia, December through February is summer. Okay, so December through February is summer. That means March through May is fall or autumn. So March through May is fall. June through August, that's winter in Australia. So June through August is winter. And then you've got September through November. That's spring. So if you think about it, you're thinking, wow, that's weird. That's impossible. Guys, did you ever think that students in Australia think it's equally weird that you guys celebrate Christmas in winter? Because if you're in Australia, Christmas is a summer holiday because December through February is summer in Australia. So Christmas takes place in the summer because their seasons are opposite ours because of where they are because they're in the Southern Hemisphere. So if you're thinking, wow, that's just so weird. The Earth tilting on its axis, the Earth being on its axis, creates those seasons. Think about it. If the Earth were just straight up and down and was not on its axis at an angle, well then guess what? If you lived near the equator, you'd have summer all year long. But if you lived, say, in the northern parts here, or you lived in the very southern parts, or in South Africa there, you basically got fall or winter all year long. So the seasons that we have, those 4 distinct seasons, come because the Earth is tilted on its axis. But our good friends in Australia, the land down under, our good friends in Australia, their seasons are opposite all of us in the Northern Hemisphere. So your assignment is simple. So if your mind is blown by that, while you're trying to recover, your assignment is simple. Well, does Australia have a summer holiday? Do they have a summer break, or is it winter break? Because winter is June through August. How does the school system work with that? So your assignment is this. How does the Australian school system work with their seasons being opposite of ours? What is that like in Australia? I want you to look that up. All right, so how does the school year work in Australia? How does the school year work in Australia since their seasons are opposite ours? I want you to look that up and then send me your answers. All right? Take care, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this.